Thousands of people are evacuated from the last rebel-held areas of Aleppo as the UN Security Council approves a resolution urging immediate deployment of UN monitors to the beleaguered area. Hundreds of people protest in the Democratic Republic of Congo, defying a ban on demonstrations against the president's plans to stay in office past Monday. And today, the U.S. Electoral College votes. We'll explain what that means for President-elect Trump. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight, a fragile peace is holding Monday in Syria as thousands of people are evacuated from the last rebel-held areas of Aleppo and a pair of villages under rebel siege. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council today unanimously approved a resolution urging immediate deployment of UN monitors to eastern Aleppo, which France says is critical to prevent, mass atrocities by Syrian forces and especially militias. Activists and local officials say about 20 buses filled with evacuees traveled from eastern Aleppo to opposition-held areas as part of an operation that began last week. But thousands of people still remain in beleaguered eastern Aleppo. On Sunday, al-Qaeda-aligned rebel fighters attacked and burned buses bound for Fawwa and Kefria in northwest Idlib province. The Syrian Observatory says Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, formerly known as the Nusra Front, was behind the bus burnings. Some of the Syrians who have left Aleppo in recent days have been relocated to Turkey. Arriving on Sunday, VOA's Zlatitsa Hoke has more on the plight of the Syrian refugees.
A group of Aleppo refugees crossed the Turkish border on Sunday. Others were taken to Idlib, another rebel-held enclave in Syria. These refugees left before evacuations were suspended amid violence in the remaining pockets of rebel-held eastern Aleppo.
There's war. They're bombing people there.
There are bombings, airstrikes in Aleppo. Many people have gone to Idlib. It is very hard.
Turkey is building a temporary refugee camp near the border with Syria for about 1,000 disadvantaged refugees, such as the wounded and their families, the elderly and the disabled. Meanwhile, militants burned at least 5 buses assigned to evacuate wounded and sick people from 2 villages in the Idlib area. The incident halted evacuations and left many civilians stranded at various points along the exit route without access to food or shelter. Empty buses waited outside besieged villages until the government and the opposition negotiate a new evacuation deal. Protesters in many countries have condemned cruelty towards civilians in Syria. On Sunday, a protest was held at the Russian embassy in Jordan's capital, Amman.
We just want to say no to the injustice and to the killing of all the children and elderly people in Syria. What's happening there is beyond... It's a massacre, it's a mass murder, and we came here to say no, to protest against the injustice that's happening there.
After hours of deliberation Sunday, France and Russia came up with a compromise draft resolution on sending UN monitors to the besieged area to observe the treatment of civilians and secure aid access to the trapped civilians. Russia has vetoed 6 Security Council resolutions on Syria since the conflict started in 2011. Zlatitsa Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, in Yemen, military officials say a suicide bomber killed at least 40 Yemeni soldiers on Sunday in the southern port city of Aden. Military officials and medics say at least 50 other soldiers were wounded in the incident. Authorities say the soldiers had gathered at a military base to receive their pay when the suicide bomber immersed himself among them and detonated his explosives. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack. The bombing comes a week after a similar explosion in Aden claimed by Islamic State that killed at least 45 soldiers and wounded dozens more. Protesters gathered in the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo and at least one other city, defying a ban on demonstrations against the President Joseph Kabila's plan to stay in office past the end of his term on Monday. The government and election officials are blaming logistical and financial problems for the delay in the vote, which is currently scheduled for April 2018. Demonstrators in Kinshasa carried red cards demanding that President Kabila step down. Opposition activists say Kabila is trying to cling to power by letting his term limit run out. Election officials, rather than having elections to appoint a successor. Well, now demonstrators, some of the opposition members have actually agreed that Kabila can remain in office. The Constitutional Court has also ruled that Kabila, leader since his father was assassinated in 2001, can stay on in power. Well, for some perspective on the situation in Congo, I'm joined in studio by Ntal Almasi. He's a consultant and analyst on DRC issues. Ntal, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
So first, we know that there are some opposition members, as we've mentioned, and also the court has said Joseph Kabila can continue staying on in power. Is there some real, genuine, legitimate reasons for that?
Well, let me first of all go back and say what the Constitutional Court did is it bestowed legality on the continuation. Yeah. But it didn't give him legitimacy. Yeah. Because legitimacy, that's what people perceive. And the people perceive that, by today, his mandate is over. Yeah. So there should be a peaceful transfer of power. So that's really the tricky part.
Now, the truth is that Joseph Kabila is not likely to relinquish power tonight. What is it that the Catholic Church, the mediators from the Catholic Church, can actually do to assure the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo that it's okay for Mr. Kabila to stay on in power?
Mm-hmm. At this point, I read the communique from the Catholic Church, last week. And I smiled because it was really another way of saying we failed in our mission. Of course, they have said they will continue on the 21st. Which is past the deadline. Which is past today and past tomorrow. Yeah. So that's why everybody is looking at what is going on in the street. And I think Felix Tshisekedi did not do well. His statesmanship did not really work there because by saying, oh, we failed, now the people should take the matters in their own hands, that's tantamount to saying, you can go in the street and...
Now, but let's say this. We have seen demonstrations in the past on the streets of Kinshasa and other towns. Yeah. They didn't make any difference. Is this something that really bothers Joseph Kabila?
Maybe. Because, what I know for today specifically is that Kinshasa, and specifically Gombe, where we have the seat of, not only the parliament, but also the presidency and the government, things are very, very slow. That means, offices did not open, schools did not open. Some
people, you could say, people are concerned because they may be afraid, but in the long term, probably this fizzles out. But here's the question. Yeah. Did Mr. Kabila suddenly realize we just can't hold this election? Or from what you understand, was there a plan actually to extend this presidency?
No, I think personally that this was deliberate. The not holding elections was deliberate. And where I differ from most of my Congolese is that...
we'll end it there. We'll probably call you back to see how things go as we look forward to the next phase of those elections, or those talks rather. Thanks a lot, Ntal, for joining us today. That's Ntal Almasi, who is a consultant and analyst on the Democratic Republic of Congo issues. UN Security Council members are expected to convene a closed-door briefing Monday on the Gambia, where veteran President Yahya Jammeh says he will not relinquish power after losing to Adama Barrow. The briefing will be on the outcome of the weekend meeting by leaders of the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, in Nigeria. Barrow's surprise victory and Jammeh's initial decision to step down was seen across Africa as a moment of hope. In an about-face, Jammeh announced on December 9th that he would reverse that position and call for a fresh vote. That move was internationally condemned, including by ECOWAS leaders who say it violates the principle of democratic accountability. ECOWAS says it will uphold the December 1st results. They are also set to attend Barrow's inauguration on January the 18th with an aim to bring the matter to a close the following day. Well, it has been just under a month since Zimbabwe's Reserve Bank first issued $75 million in its new currency. The bond notes are pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar. Well, the government hopes the new money will counter the shortage of cash in the country. But critics see it as a move by President Robert Mugabe to hold on to power. VOA's Heidi Adams Fitzpatrick tells us more.
It looks like new money and it feels like new money. But will the latest Zimbabwean dollar help cure the country's economic pain, or is this just history repeating itself? Most businesses, even black market traders, have accepted the new bond notes. Some street vendors in Harare hope new money means a new era.
To my side, things are changing because I can get the $2 notes, the dollar coin, and people are coming to buy with the notes. Yeah, it seems as people are getting money here and there, so we can manage to build up my business. So I think it may be mid-March, April, if the bonds are a lot, things will be okay.
I think the bond notes are going to help us a lot because everyone has embraced and accepted them.
Critics are calling this President Robert Mugabe's last gamble. They bet the bond notes will quickly lose value against the US dollar. Many economists say even if that doesn't happen, the new currency is nothing but a band-aid for an economy with a $250 million per month trade deficit.
You have a situation where people have never even been able to access their money for a long time, and most of them are desperate. So it's like a question of really grinding people until they are desperate. This is the festive season. People need to buy stuff for the holidays. People need to prepare for the agricultural season. So you literally have forced people into a situation where they have no choice but to accept these bond notes.
Zimbabwe had been so cash-strapped it could not afford key imports. The country's also had to deal with a devastating drought that has left millions facing hunger and increased the need for imported food. Many are hopeful the new money will change that. But few can forget the last time Zimbabwe had its own currency. In 2008, the Zim dollar was trading at 35 quadrillion to the US dollar after hyperinflation hit 500 billion%. Heidi Adams Fitzpatrick, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, the next chapter in the U.S. presidential election plays out Monday, with voting in the Electoral College expected to officially confirm America's 45th president. Stay with us.
This is Living Better.
Researchers say that a new gene editing technique could pave the way towards a cure for sickle cell disease, which affects about 5 million people globally, with most cases in Africa.
We know exactly the mutation that causes the disease, and we know that if we correct that mutation, we will cure the disease.
Mark DeWitt of the University of California at Berkeley, the disease causes red blood cells to be abnormally shaped, blocking blood flow and leading to severe pain and organ damage. The researchers say they corrected the genetic mutation in stem cells and implanted the edited cells into a mouse.
We looked at the levels of editing, and we were getting levels of editing consistent with achieving a clinical benefit in patients with sickle cell disease.
DeWitt says that healthy red blood cells were produced efficiently enough to potentially cure the disease in humans, but it will be years before the research translates into treatment. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Well, the next chapter in the tumultuous U.S. presidential election plays out Monday, with voting in the Electoral College expected to officially confirm Donald Trump as America's 45th president. Voters have known since early November that Trump would take over the White House, but U.S. presidential elections are not determined by the popular vote, but by electors who gather in all 50 U.S. state capitals. VOA's Caroline Pursuit explains.
U.S. voters went to the polls and elected a president last month. So the one with the most votes wins, right? Not quite. Hillary Clinton received 65.7 million votes, and Donald Trump received 62.9 million. So how is he president? The Constitution sets up a system called the Electoral College that decides who's elected president. Representatives, called electors, are selected from each state to vote for the candidate who won the majority of votes in that state. The number of electors for each state is equal to its members of Congress. So states with bigger populations have more electors. States with lower populations have fewer. The winning presidential candidate, in this case Donald Trump, has to have a majority, or 270 electoral votes. Trump actually has 306 to Clinton's 232. So why did the forefathers add the Electoral College to the Constitution? We asked Texas A&M's political science professor George Edwards via Skype.
Some didn't really trust the people to vote. And, of course, this had never really been done on any kind of scale before. So it's not unusual, or wasn't unusual, not to trust the mob, as some folks referred to the people.
In this unusual year, some electors are being pressured to change their vote. They are called faithless electors. But any change in the outcome would require a loss of 37 electoral votes for Trump, which is highly unlikely. There's also talk of eliminating the antiquated Electoral College system. Again, Edwards.
There's no value at all of the Electoral College. It violates political equality, meaning all votes don't count equal.
On Monday, the electors meet to cast their votes. It's expected to be only a formality in the election process. Then on January 20th, Donald Trump is inaugurated as president. Caroline Pursuti, VOA News, Washington.
Well, now with more on the electoral process, we are joined by Jim Malone, VOA's national correspondent. Jim, welcome.
Thanks, Vincent.
A very significant day, but let me say this. I cannot remember a time when I called you to come and discuss this day. Has it been more significant this year to talk about the voting of the Electoral College?
Well, there does seem to be something more in the air about whether or not electors have to vote for the candidate who wins in their state. And that's what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about a state-by-state election system. The electors are actually chosen by the political parties in the state. Whichever candidate wins that state, that slate of electors, which is generally partisan, will support that candidate. That's why it's hard. You have Democrats calling on Republican electors not to vote for Trump. It's not really going to happen.
And again, across the world, this particular year, people noticed that the other candidate, Hillary Clinton, seemed to have gotten more votes, and yet she won't be the president.
By quite a bit, 2.8 million. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. But, you know, one of the other reasons they set up this system so that smaller states would have a voice. If you just did it based on population, the large states would rule. So they built this state-by-state electoral vote. You have to accumulate the votes by winning in the individual states, and that's what Trump is going to benefit from.
In the past, it didn't seem to really make people get, so kind of worked up over this. What is it in this election that have made people feel so strongly about this process?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the divided country. The fact that Hillary Clinton could win the popular vote by such a large margin. She's very popular along the two coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast. But in the middle is where Trump was able to craft together enough of an electoral college path to win the presidency, and particularly by performing states in the upper Midwest that in recent years have gone Democratic.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are those who are saying, well, this particular day could sway things the other way because there are those electors who are called faithless who may cross the divide. How is that likely? I mean, is that likely to change?
No, it's not likely. And listen, they've been inundated with emails and letters urging them to change their vote. Most of them are saying, not a chance. if they are designated as a Republican elector in a various state where Trump won, they're not going to change their vote based on that. There's one guy in Texas who's talking about it, but he's an exception to the rule. The electors will generally confirm the results in their states. That's what they're doing, and that's what we expect this time.
From what you're hearing, that those who've been proposing, perhaps we should do away with this. Is is this more of an elitist kind of conversation, or is it something that the voters, the citizens, feel strongly about?
Yeah, not so much, perhaps. Some do, but it's a steep curve to get it switched. You need 2/3 of the Congress in each house to vote to craft a constitutional amendment to do away with it, and you need 3/4 of the states to ratify. It's very unlikely that you'd be able to build enough public support to do that.
And then again, you have to change the mindset, because as they said, the founding fathers were thinking about, the voters as a mob that cannot be trusted all the time.
Well, and the Republicans will not be agreeing to any change on this anytime soon. They've won 2 elections in 16 years based on this.
Yeah. All right. Now, so talking briefly before we run out of time about, the challenge ahead for the president. Once this day passes, what next for the president-elect?
The results will be confirmed on January 6th before Congress, so they'll be actually officially announced. Now he's putting together his government, of course, but there's still this cloud of the Russian hacking hanging over the incoming administration, and he's still dismissing the idea that it had much of an impact. This is going to be a point of political polarization just as his new administration gets started.
Yeah, but is that historically something that necessarily can undermine his presidency? We know that, for example, some people felt like President Bush went in with little legitimacy because of the situation in Florida. Is that something that can really bother Trump?
Not necessarily. Over time, it tends to fall away, perhaps, if he can unite the country around other things or be seen as successful. And I think we'll see a very big push in the first 100 days to change the tax laws, to change the situation with regard to the president's health care program. So we're going to see a lot there, and he's hoping to rally his base. That'll carry him through the initial period of his presidency.
Just a few seconds left. Thought on the thank you rallies. Has anything else? Have you
remarkable.
This?
We haven't seen this before, and we'll probably keep seeing it.
Thank you. I think we're done. Thanks a lot, Jim, for your insights. We do appreciate very much. Jim Malone is a national correspondent here at the Voice of America. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Christmas holiday is around the corner, and children around the world are waiting for that special gift from the man of the week, Santa Claus. Will he deliver? We'll tell you.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In the DRC, protesters in Kinshasa demand that President Joseph Kabila step down when his second term in office expires at midnight. In South Sudan, a fragile peace exists in Abyei, a disputed territory between Sudan and South Sudan, but many of those displaced by the violence are reluctant to return to the area. And Ethiopia has officially opened the 3rd largest hydroelectric plant in Africa. Finally, the Moroccan government launches the 2nd phase of a scheme to recognize thousands of illegal migrants in the country. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Well, it's time now for what's trending. First, Hollywood is recalling the life of Zsa Gabor. The actress has died at age 99. Miss Gabor was light years ahead of celebrities such as Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian for turning fame into an art form. Calling nearly everyone she met darling, Zsa made a major name for herself playing socialite who adored diamond, furs, and wealthy men. She appeared in many movies and TV shows, but she's probably best known for her marriages, perhaps as many as 9, depending on who's counting. She's survived by her last husband, a European prince. Well, now to the man of the week, Jolly Old Saint Nikki Every Christmas, children around the world write letters to Santa Claus. While some make it to the North Pole, other letters reach Santa Claus via one small town in the U.S. state of Indiana. Erika Celeste has the story.
Welcome to Santa Claus, Indiana. Though the town may be 6,000 kilometers south of the North Pole, the residents are some of Santa's best helpers. That's because every year they get nearly 25,000 letters for the jolly old elf, and they answer every one of them.
From the earliest we know is that the postmaster started answering letters in 1914 that children wrote.
By 1930, the postmaster was overwhelmed. When head elf Pat Cook's father heard, he organized local veterans, the American Legion, area clergy, and the high school typing classes into the first volunteer letter-writing elves. Pat started helping just a little over a decade later. These days, the elves send out one of 4 form letters that bear positive messages about sharing, being good, and helping others. But they also include a personal note.
We never promise anything, and we never admonish anybody. We just encourage.
Letters arrive year-round, but the bulk of them come in November and December. Chief Male Elf Ed Reinhardt believes there isn't a country they haven't heard from. And the U.S. Postal Service ensures that the letters get to Indiana no matter the address.
They come in the mail, and that's all they have on it, Santa. Some of them say Santa North Pole. Some of them say to the guy in the big red suit.
Other times, letters arrive from small children without a stamp or just a sticker in the corner. While they try to answer every letter, the elves are saddened when no return address is included. Their research team tries to track the letters by postmark zip code, but sometimes even that's not enough. So they encourage parents to always check for return addresses before letters are mailed. This year, Hatchimals, iPhones, puppies, and ponies are all big requests from children. But there are plenty of requests from adults, too. Young people in China asked to do well on exams or get into university.
We've had some adults that have asked for a diamond ring or a husband. We've had adults that asked for healing.
The elves of Santa Claus never dreamed their good deeds would get so much attention. Despite suggestions that people pay for the letters from Santa, they hold firm to their commitment to continue the service for free.
Everything that happens because there are good people who care about the real Christmas spirit and the real meaning of Christmas.
For VOA News, I'm Erika Celeste in Santa Claus, Indiana.
Well, and that's our show for today. And I'll be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC. That's Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to my ears. Now I'll have a chance to catch up on my latest book.
You say something is music to your ears when you hear good news or just news that makes you happy. Music is pleasant to listen to. That is where this expression comes from. In our example, learning that she didn't have to work on the weekend was music to Anna's ears. And that's English in a Minute.